Might surprise you to learn that the fights between Obi-Wan and Anakin were created by the same team that worked on the John Wick movies. That's the level of choreography we're studying here. The choreography running through these 3 fights is tightly woven to tell a bunch of stories, some of which the directors and editors weren't even aware of, because as you're about to see, someone screwed up in the editing room by underestimating just how good the choreographers were. After moving exclusively backwards for 2 fights, Kenobi is finally moving forward. This is the beginning of his transformation. He dodges 2 of Vader's strikes that bounce off of the boulders. He blocks a strike and then switches to the special grip that we've seen him use to equal Anakin's strength. This is supposed to be a huge moment. We've been set up throughout all 3 fights to see this grip as signaling Obi-Wan no longer being overpowered. But then the choreography gets interrupted in order to go back to Vader hitting the boulders? Look, Vader hits the boulder on his left, then the one on his right. We get Obi-Wan switching grips, then they simply switch the order of the boulder hits and go back to them. Vader hits the one on his right, then the one on his left. If I switch the order in the second round of boulder hits, you can tell it's the same part of the fight. The first frame of this shot even has the sparks flying through the air from the previous boulder hit. This does show us that the sparks were a practical effect and not added in post, which is neat, but it makes no sense for it to go from this move to sparks appearing out of nowhere. This cut back to the boulders is the mistake I was talking about, and I know what some of you are thinking already. How is this not nitpicking? It's a weird edit, but whatever, the boulder hits looked neat, so just enjoy the spectacle of the fight and move on. After all, we do go back to Obi-Wan's special grip thing after the extra boulder hits, right? I'm telling you right now, if those thoughts crossed your mind, you're thinking like the editor and director, not like the choreographers. You're underestimating how intricately crafted and densely packed these fights are, and how much storytelling is being done across these 3 fight scenes through choreography alone. The main story in these fight scenes is the journey of Obi-Wan's abilities from full strength to his lowest level, back to full strength, and then reaching his full potential at a level we didn't even know he was capable of. What goes hand in hand with all of that is how he's able to deal with the power of Anakin at each of those stages. Every single move that happens from this grip switch onward was painstakingly set up by all of this action. Prepare for the deepest dive into Star Wars fight choreography you have ever seen. This block knocks Obi-Wan back, and this next one knocks him to his knees. He turns it into a strike, but he is still down, and it's obvious he doesn't want to be. We see a 2-handed strike from Kenobi easily held back by Vader with one hand. Then, with just one hand, Vader overpowers Kenobi, sending him back down to his knees. Kenobi switches grips. This is important. It's the same grip I just mentioned they interrupted to go back to the boulders. He also uses this grip in the flashback fight, the double overhand grip. We see that grip increases his strength. With it, he's able to stand back up against Vader, but then all Vader has to do is start using his other hand and Kenobi is back to being helpless. The choreography gives us Kenobi being overpowered by being knocked back, overpowered more by being knocked down. It gives us hope by showing us Kenobi can still use that old tactic to negate Vader's power, and then that hope gets torn away when we're reminded that we're only seeing a fraction of Vader's true power. I need to point this out because I've seen breakdowns saying that Anakin almost walks into a strike and loses, which is what Obi-Wan means when he says,
"Grow too aggressive, Anakin. Be mindful."
That's not what happens. Obi-Wan's being overpowered and moved by Anakin's strike when he blocks it, so instead of trying to stand his ground, he allows Anakin's strike to cause him to spin. He uses that spin to launch his attack. The strike that almost defeats Anakin is literally powered by his own aggression.
"Grow too aggressive, Anakin. Be mindful."
This flashback training session is vital to the choreography's storytelling because this is Obi-Wan at full strength and Anakin before reaching full strength. We're being shown that with a normal 2-handed grip, Kenobi still can't manage to stand toe-to-toe with Anakin without being slightly overpowered. This adds suspense to any future encounters because we know that where we are now in the story has Obi-Wan weaker than this and Anakin stronger than this. This sequence is very important. If you want to be a fight choreographer, this is the sweet stuff right here. We see Kenobi block and stay standing, but when he blocks, his lightsaber gets hit down. So now we see he can either stay standing and have his weapon hit down when he blocks, or he can keep the weapon where it is and have his whole body get hit down when he blocks. Obi-Wan doesn't go to his knees just for some cliche dramatic effect. We see what'll happen if he doesn't. If he doesn't kneel down, it's the weapon that'll be hit down, leaving him open to being hit. The only way for him to keep his lightsaber in position and block these strikes is to go down to his knees. It's not just that everything's happening for kind of a reason. Oh, he's going down because Anakin is stronger. It's that these choreographers are making sure to show us exactly what that reason is and before something happens. He's going down to prevent Anakin's strength from creating the opening we just saw. This part looks weird because it's supposed to be Anakin hitting Obi-Wan's lightsaber off to the side to create an opening to cut him down, but we didn't get a sound effect for the lightsaber clash, even though we do see Obi-Wan's lightsaber in the shot. While this does initially look like a stupid part of the choreography, once we put the sound in that's supposed to be there, it looks normal and makes sense. Now instead of it looking like Anakin is being an idiot and doing a fancy flail which lets Kenobi escape, Anakin looks like he's using his power to create an opportunity to win, and Obi-Wan is using his movement to escape. This way both characters look intelligent and both are using tactics that we see come up again in their final fight. So if you thought this spot looked stupid, it's not because of the choreography, it's because the choreographers weren't consulted during the editing process, which would have allowed them to point out these important moments of storytelling that the director and editor were forgetting. Fight choreography isn't just a bunch of moves that the director and editor try to piece together into a cool looking jigsaw puzzle. At least good choreography isn't. And when you're getting the team from the John Wick movies to choreograph these fights, assume that they're better at fight choreography than you are and bring them back to see the final edit. You need to consult your fight choreographers during post-production, and these fights from the Kenobi series prove that. Anakin's little duck walk here looks weird, I know, but there's a good character reason. Anakin has already put Kenobi into a few disadvantageous positions. He's had him on his knees and nearly defeated him. Anakin is boasting that he can go down to his knees and still beat Obi-Wan. Anakin in the weakest position is still stronger than Obi-Wan in the strongest position.
You underestimate my power!
It looks weird because as a choice of a position to go to, it is weird. This is a much more creative way of having a fighter drop their hands and offer the opponent a free shot. Anakin is offering Obi-Wan a free positional advantage.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
This shows that as far as Anakin is concerned, there's no advantage Obi-Wan could possibly have that would allow him to win. This is also a great way to hint at his inner dark side. Anakin doesn't just want to win, he wants to crush any sense of hope in the process. I know this is a lot to say about this little sequence, but I think it's important to point out that this isn't something that's being done to give the audience something to marvel at the coolness of. Bad choreography gives a character something cool to do for no reason other than to wow the audience. Great choreography involves a heavy focus on the characters doing moves that reveal things about them and their intentions. They do a great job of finding unique ways to force Obi-Wan to his knees instead of being repetitive. Knocked down while trying the same spinning counter to use Anakin's aggression against him as before, but being so weak that he can't even stay standing underneath that power while attempting the move. Forced straight down from strikes while cornered and motionless. Propping himself up with his lightsaber and then having it taken out from under him, knocking into his knees. And later being thrown at the end of a sequence. Lazy choreography would have built this narrative by having him overpowered down to his knees in pretty much the same way every time, and had him in the exact same kneeling pose every time. Great choreography builds that same narrative by finding fresh, creative ways to get the character into that position, and makes sure that the position isn't identical every time. It's deliberate that these are all slight variations of the same kneeling pose. So now that 3 fights have been used to build this entire narrative around Obi-Wan ending up down on one knee, what is the payoff? Obi-Wan finally uses his special double overhand grip. He not only stops Vader from advancing, we see that he's now strong enough to drive Vader back with it. Obi-Wan spins, and the boulders that had stopped Vader's lightsaber aren't enough to stop Obi-Wan's blade. He cuts through them like they aren't even there. Then, for the first time in 3 fights, he goes down to one knee voluntarily. He does it twice. His weakest position, one of disadvantage, is now one that he's figured out how to gain an advantage with. Kenobi smashes Vader's lightsaber down, and for the next strike, Vader keeps his lightsaber in position and is knocked back. Vader has now become Obi-Wan in this sequence from the first fight. Vader is essentially Obi-Wan being overpowered and knocked down to his knees. This choreography is incredible at making sure the moments that are connected between fights aren't identical. They give us the essence of the first sequence, but don't fall into the lazy trap of using identical choreography with the characters reversed. Resorting to identical choreo means treating the audience like idiots. Being willing to make these moments different but with the same essence means they're really treating Star Wars fans with a lot of respect, because they're relying on us to make the connections without them being spelled out for us. Breaking up Obi-Wan's grip switch interrupts the emotional momentum. We have 3 fight scenes worth of conditioning, all culminating in watching Obi-Wan switch his grip, drive Vader back, cut through the boulders that Vader couldn't, overcoming what is essentially the low ground and finding strength in his weakest position, then smashing Vader's lightsaber down and fulfilling the role reversal of essentially being the one to overpower Vader and drive him to his knees. But, because the choreographers likely weren't consulted on the final edit of the fight scene, this shot is chopped up in order to go back in time and see Vader hit more rocks, which causes the emotional energy to stumble right off the starting blocks and never reach the top speed it otherwise would have. The editor or director or both decided to interrupt the storytelling of the choreography in order to show what they thought looked cool: more boulder hits with sparks. This is why I think choreographers need to be brought back in and consulted when the fights are being edited. Look at how much better this storytelling is when we see the choreography the way we were supposed to. If you can't tell, I love Star Wars fights and martial arts in general. We've had Donnie Yen in the Star Wars universe, but can you imagine what we would get if we had a Kung Fu Cinema Star Wars crossover? We'd get cool shit like the Ip ManDalorian. Oh, the fist is the way. Nah, this is just my way of bringing up that I do have merch now. It's basically me making fight choreography stuff that I want to order myself so that I can wear it. And if you guys think it's cool, sweet. There's a link in the description, or you can click on the store tab on my YouTube channel. And if you're interested in seeing another Star Wars video of mine about what I like to call the Lego problem, click on this video here.